is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In this video, we're going to be looking at potential replacements for Graham Glasgow. So, let's get it started. That's right, so today we talked about how Graham Glasgow is getting set to walk to free agency. Well, walk to free agency. That's weird. I never even said it like that before. He's getting set to walk, so he's not going to be with the Detroit Lions anymore. And the question is, who can we put there to replace him at right guard, right? He's one of the top guards that are going to be available in free agency. He can arguably be the second best guard because Brandon Sheriff is probably going to be tagged. So who do we get to replace a guy like Graham Glasgow of that talent because we don't want to pay that big contract? Well, I talked about earlier today that, hey, you know what? I'm going to give it a chance. We're going to give it a shot. We'll see what they can do because, yes, I would have loved to bring him back, but they didn't. I'm still going to give it the opportunity to fix it, right? There's still a chance that they can make it right and it could work. And maybe next season I'm like, all right, you guys did it without him. You didn't have to spend the money, and hey, do you. You do you. But we know we're losing a heck of a player. One of the best players, one of the best offensive linemen that are going to be available, like I said, by Pro Football Focus standards, by pretty much every measurement you use, okay? He didn't allow a single sack last season. He only had 3 penalties all year. So he was definitely just a heck of a player, versatile. He could pretty much do everything. But now he is not any longer going to be with the Lions, most likely. So what are the Detroit Lions going to do to replace him? That is a big question. Well, there's a few options. You have free agency, or you have the draft, or you have in-house. Now, in-house to me is really scary, and I don't know if I necessarily want to do that. I think we have to bring in somebody, at least to compete. But I guess they could stay in-house, which I don't love. Right now, looking at our current lineup, where we're saving about $10 to $14 million a year because we're not bringing back Graham Glasgow. Looking at our current lineup, we have Taylor Decker at the left tackle, which is what it is. At left guard, which could be changed, it is currently right now I put as Joe Dahl. At the center position, we have Frank Ragnow, who's been very good for us. At right guard, where the question mark is now, I have Joshua Garnett and also Terrell Crosby. And then at right tackle, I have Rick Wagner. So that's what our offensive line looks like right now. Kind of nasty, kind of like, ooh, that's not so good. But the Detroit Lions could definitely fix it this offseason. So one guy that is pending that I didn't mention was Kenny Wiggins. So you probably caught on that. Yes, he's not signed back yet, but he may be. He may not be. He may be. I don't know. Ode Abushi, he's also another guy that we could bring back for depth, but I didn't mention those guys because they are not currently on the roster. So those are the main guys. And Garnett and Crosby are the two guys that I see fighting for that spot, unless, Doggle's a right guard and then left guard becomes Crosby. I don't necessarily know how they're going to do that. So the in-house option here would really be Joshua Garnett. Joshua Garnett was a former first-round pick that was selected. He's a very young player. He wasn't selected that long ago, but so far at this point, you would call him a bust, right? That's what you would say Joshua Garnett has. He hasn't been able to find a home, and he landed with the Detroit Lions. And I honestly liked the move to bring in Joshua Garnett. I had no problems with it. You're bringing in a guy that, up to this point, because of injuries and other things like that, like, okay, look, this guy hasn't been able to find his way in the NFL. But the potential is there, and we got him on a very, very cheap deal. And I was like, you know what? That makes sense. Why would you not bring him in to compete? So there is that possible scenario, which I think is very small, that the Lions saw Joshua Garnett, and they're like, yeah, that guy's better than Glasgow. We don't even need to keep him. Or he's good enough that we don't need him, and they already decided that Joshua Garnett's their right guard for next season. As long as he's healthy, they just need to put depth behind him. They could have decided that. Now, I did think about this a little bit. The Detroit Lions maybe once again looking at how the Patriots are doing things and trying to follow a little bit, which I don't mind too much because I do like the thought of, looking at what good teams do and taking from that, because that's how you become good. Look at what someone does well and you're like, okay, I like that idea. I'm going to do something similar. Not necessarily doing the exact same thing or taking their players, but doing something similar. So I'm not mad about it too much. That if that is the case, we'll see how it works out. Hopefully it works out for them. I'm always for protecting Stafford, so that's why I always put a big emphasis on the offensive line. Even though some people maybe not as much as me, I always think the offensive line is a huge factor because not just the running game. I mean, the running game is important and stuff. It wasn't completely awful. I mean, it wasn't good last season. We ranked 21 in the league, averaging 4.1 yards per carry. So not terrible. The problem with me is I always want to protect Matthew Stafford, and that's kind of what it comes down to. So definitely put more stake into the offensive line than a lot of people do. So just keep that in mind as we go through this. Now, we're going to look at some options that are not in-house, okay? Let's start off with free agency. We're going to start from the top and work our way down. The first guy would be Joe Thuney, okay? Joe Thuney, who is probably the best interior offensive lineman that's going to be available. Maybe the best offensive lineman in general that will be available from the New England Patriots. So obviously, they may be interested right away. But if they're following that Patriots way of, hey, I'm not going to sign a big deal for a guard, even though he's very good, because Joe Thuney has a lot of similarities. He's healthy. Graham Glasgow's healthy. He's one of the best interior offensive linemen. Graham Glasgow is one of the best offensive interior linemen. They're the same age. They're basically the same age. They were drafted the same year in the same round. I mean, there's so many similarities there. that, the Lions may look at this and say, hey, we're going to copy what they're doing, like I said before. Or they may just want to go get that guy and say, hey, no, we like him better than Glasgow because he's with the Patriots or because we think he's better. I don't know. The Lions could do that. He'd be your top option. You're going to be paying probably a little bit more than what you would have paid to extend Graham Glasgow, but they could do that. I'm not saying they can. They could. Next up will be Brandon Scherff, but I'm not really going to talk about him too much because he is expected to get the franchise tag as well as Eric Flowers. They're trying to tag both of those or bring both of those guys back, whether it's extensions or tags, so we'll see how that works out. The next guy, though, I think is kind of a sleeper that we should keep an eye on when it comes to free agency, and this is Greg Van Roten. Greg Van Roten, I think that's how you say his name, Greg Van Roten, I think it's Roten. He is an offensive lineman that plays for the Carolina Panthers, and he was named their most improved player over the past season. Okay, the Panthers, they did their most improved players. Like we do the Lions Awards, their most improved player was Greg Van Roten. And for good measure, right? He did really well last season. He definitely looked like a lot better player, and he's a he's a younger player in this league, and he could actually make sense for the Lions to bring in because he was only on a 2-year deal with the Carolina Panthers for $1.6 million. Now, obviously, some of these guys we mentioned could be tagged, they could be signed. We don't know, but what we do know is that there's a potential they could be available to us. So, I'm going to mention them anyways, and if they're not available, they're not available. But this guy signed only a 2-year, $1.6 million contract, and he had a really good season actually for the amount of money that he was getting paid. I mean, compare that, you're saving about $10 million, you're still getting a solid guard. This would be the one guy I could see. Now, one common theme with all of these offensive linemen is injuries. You will see injuries across the board. Every single lineman I named, you can assume they're going to have injuries. That's one thing that Glasgow and Thuney have that not a lot of other linemen have, and that's why they're so hyped up. It's not just because of versatility, but they're just not hurt. They're so healthy, and my goodness, I forgot to get my wood. Okay, someone told me to get wood so I can knock on it, but I don't have wood. Okay, hold up one second. I have nut. No, nuts are not the same. Do I have any wood in here? I do have wood in here, but it's not. Hold up. I'm going to go knock on some wood. Just give me 1 second, okay? Let's see if y'all can. Hold up. I can just knock on the floor. My floor is wood. I got wood floor. Hold up. Okay, so yeah, I forgot what I'm knocking on wood for. Gosh, okay, now I forgot what we're talking about. Oh, the healthy. Okay, yeah, so he's healthy, so that's what's great about them. And now you're going to see a lot of these players aren't very healthy. But he was given a 65.6 Pro Football Focus grade. He only allowed 1 sack all season and 2 penalties. And he was a really good offensive lineman. So this is a guy I would keep an eye on. Now, he could be set to get a bigger contract after a way better year. But at the same time, he's already been in the league for a while. This is a second deal. So this is a guy that I could see not being super expensive. Maybe a little bit more than 2 years, $1.6 million. But not as expensive as Graham Glasgow the Lions could bring in. Next up is Mike Ayupati. I literally have no idea how to say his name. And I've seen this name a lot. Sorry, I don't know guards' names. You don't hear guards' names a lot. I don't know how to say them. You guys know who I'm talking about, though, I think. He signed a 1-year, $2.75 million. That was his last contract with the Seattle Seahawks. And now he is a 32-year-old offensive lineman. He's a little bit older, but offensive linemen you do think can play a little bit longer usually. He's coming off a 60.3 Pro Football Focus grade. He allowed 5 sacks and had 8 penalties last season. A little bit concerning there for sure. 5 sacks from the guard spot is not something that interests me a lot. Personally, I'm okay if you give up that from the tackle spot. I'm not okay with it, but I can understand it. From the guard spot, that's a little concerning considering Graham Glasgow didn't give up a single one, but I guess that's the money difference. Now, he'd probably be a lot cheaper. He'd actually probably be cheaper than what Greg Van is probably going to get paid. So all of these guys are going to be cheaper options. Next up is Denzel Good, who can play both tackle and guard, which is really interesting. Talk about versatility. This is a guy that we could bring in. Denzel Good really was interesting to me because of that reason. He's only 29 years old, so we could sign him like a 2, possibly 3-year deal. He did play in all 16 games last season. However, before that, he had to deal with a lot of injuries. 65.1 Pro Football Focus grade. Again, very good. Signs are pointing up here pretty much. Other than the injuries, signs are pointing up. He only had 2 penalties and only allowed 1 sack. However, he did only play in 300 snaps. So a little bit concerning about his playing time, but I mean, seriously, he was known as a really good backup guard and tackle that could do both. He could potentially be a starter for us next season if we bring him in. And finally, I have Quinton Spain. Quinton Spain has been more healthy than really the other players that we've listed here other than Thuney and Glasgow. He's been more healthy, but he hasn't been necessarily as good. Okay, so I guess there's a little bit of a trade-off here. He's 28 years old. His last deal was 1 year for $2 million. He's coming off a 55.4 Pro Football Focus grade. He did allow 0 sacks, though, in 1,000 snaps. Now, it's different from the guard spot. You don't allow a lot of sacks. That's why the 5 sacks kind of concerns me a little bit with Mike. But you usually don't allow that many sacks from the guard spot. It's more the tackle spot. It's really about the interior offensive line, blocking for the run and protecting the pressure from the inside, so not giving up a lot of pressures. But he has not allowed a single sack in 1,000 snaps. And when it comes down to it, that's a really big reason that Graham Glasgow is very, very looked at as one of the best interior offensive linemen. So the fact that he hasn't allowed a single sack is very, very good. So that could be another option for the Detroit Lions when it comes to free agency. There's obviously a lot of other options out there, but those are really the best ones that I think could make sense. I would say Greg actually makes a lot of sense. Denzel Good is a guy to keep an eye on. So Lions can find an option, and this is why in my last video, I didn't want to say completely that, oh, we're done. It's over. We didn't bring Greg. It's over. We done. But no, it's definitely going to be hard to, get a replacement that can give you that same thing or even anywhere near it. But it's not like it's impossible. It's not impossible. It's just not going to be easy. So we'll see if any of those guys come available. Now, the draft is your other option. Now, draft is definitely risky. I wouldn't say it's more risky than free agency because injuries are a lot of free agency. So there's definitely a lot of risk hoping that your players are healthy. But it's risky because you don't know. You have no idea what these players are going to turn into. Go by rounds. First round, I would say Tristan Wirfs is the one option that you could look at. I mean, we're looking at guards here. Wirfs is the only guy that really can play both. So I would say Wirfs, obviously, is really good. So that'd be the guy I'm probably not too concerned about if we did get to bring in. However, I don't think we're going to bring in an offensive lineman in the first round. But again, it wouldn't surprise me too much because we've seen Bob Quinn do it multiple times. But at number 3, no. If you trade back pretty far, possibly. Lloyd Cushenberry, who plays center in college, I think he could move the guard. He looks like a guy that can move the guard, and that's why I have him always as a fit for Chicago. Cesar Ruiz is a very interesting one to me. I think he's going to be a second-round pick. I would not be mad if you took him at 35. Replace Glasgow just like that. And you guys have seen my mock drafts, my mock off seasons. I've been replacing Glasgow if I don't bring him back, like the mock drafts, a lot. So yeah, I mean, I was kind of prepared for this. We kind of already knew this was going to happen. Nite Mutai is a guy that a lot of people like. He's solid, but the problem is he's never really been able to live up to that because every year he seems to get hurt. So for him, I'm just kind of out. Because of that reason, I'm out. Like Shark Tank, no. And then Tyler Diaz, a lot of people, I always put him on my list, and some people are like, why do you always have him up there? I really like him. I think he has great potential. He's one of the best offensive linemen in college football. Now, some people were concerned about the injuries, but he did have surgery. However, even though that seems super concerning, the next year he came back, didn't miss a beat. He was still great. So, not too concerned there. And I would say after that, you're looking at some questionable, I don't know how far back you really want to go for a starting right guard unless you're just looking for competition for Garnett. You can look at Ben Bredesen, Shane Limu. I mean, there's a lot of guys out there that are later. So let me know your thoughts, comments below. These are just some options that I thought would put together so you guys could think about, talk about, and if I missed any, definitely put them in the comments below. But I think that's really the lines we're going to go with this. Again, I don't think it's over because we didn't bring him back. Yes, would I have loved to bring him back? Absolutely, but we didn't, and it doesn't look like we're going to. And because of that, I thought might as well look at some options, and we'll see if the Lions can fix it during the offseason. So let's see what happens. Thank you for watching, and I'm out.